Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. We're doing some special gaming content today. It's gaming content and I'm on it. I'm astonished. It's wild. What kind of world are we living in? Hell is frozen over. Um, we're talking about the new Steam Deck. That's why I'm here, because I'm a Steam user. Joined, of course, by Abram and Tucker, the video game experts of the Backlog Banter channel, and they're going to give me some thoughts about from a different perspective. We're just going to go over this big news. I know it was yesterday; it was really coming out, and a lot of people were talking about it, but still relevant today. People are buying them, deciding to pre-order now. It's exciting news, I think. The people have said that, well, the Switch Pro wasn't exactly what they hoped for, and then Valve, out of the blue, drops this new kit of hardware. So, thoughts? I mean, I'm really interested. I don't know, Tucker, you haven't really told me a lot about what you think of this development. So,
My first thought, if I
yeah.
can interject, is if the audience has thoughts, they can join our
Oh,
Discord link as usual, top of the
Please
description. While
do.
down there, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I have Stockholm syndrome. I have to do it every time. Tucker, continue.
I don't have a ton of thoughts about this, considering I have everything I really feel like I need in terms of gaming. I've got a PC. It's not very good, but it runs what I need to. I've got my Switch. I've got access to an Xbox and a PS5 and stuff. So I think this is very incredible stuff. It almost seems too good to be true, and I'm very hesitant that this is going to be the exact thing that people think when it comes out. Of course, there have been some hands-on impressions which are already seeming very good, but on the whole, it's awesome. But it does seem too good to be true, and I think that's my main thought.
very interesting. Abram.
So, I think this is the best chance that this provenly niche idea has of becoming popular.
Yeah.
The idea of a portable PC is not new, but this is the first time we've had a valve attached to it. This is going to be the most accessible permutation of this concept, but I'm not necessarily sure what that means in terms of mass market. I think the people that say that this thing is going to kill the Switch are off base. I think the people that say that this is going to be the be all end all portable PC gaming machine are off base. What I think this is going to be, and the reason I'm attracted to it, is it's going to be a fairly competent way to get into PC gaming for people on the outside that still has all of the baggage of PC gaming and all of the complications that come with it, but just in a new context, which is attractive to me as somebody who loves handheld gaming and comes from the console side. But I don't think this is necessarily going to cement Valve here. I think this is probably going to be better than the Steam machines, but not
Steam
the
Link, I think their console was called.
whatever it was. Better
They
than
also made Razer
yeah.
desktops way back in the day. This was a while ago, 5, 6 years ago.
So it'd be better than that stuff, but I don't think this is the big installation that the kind of hype is belying. But very cool device, and I am going to pick one up. Probably not until next year, probably because I physically won't be able to. But it is on my radar to get one.
Yeah, well, I'm coming at it, from the opposite perspective. I don't and have never owned a console or like a handheld gaming device. I've used the Switch a lot. I've played quite a lot of games on Tucker's Switch and other friends. But coming from the PC sphere, it's very interesting to me because I have considered buying a Switch. I don't need an Xbox. I don't really need a standalone play in my living room on the TV console, but the handheld aspect of the Switch and now the Steam Deck really appeals to me in that I can play some games on the go wherever I want to. I don't think the battery life is yeah. I was gonna say I don't think the battery life has been shown super in depth on this thing. We'll see how long it really holds up under heavy load with big time games playing, but they're promising some pretty good specs on this. It's hitting solid 30 FPS on a 720p screen, playing new hardware, new games, which very cool. And I guess just part of the thing that really, I was looking this up earlier beforehand, that makes this a good value proposition, at least for someone like me who's played a lot of games on computer, and I own a lot of games on Steam. And there's a little Steam DB thing that I went and I looked up the value of my account. So if we're going to account this into the price
Value
of the
that you're
console,
getting out of your thing, yeah.
I already own like $1,000 worth of games
Yeah,
that I
I'm
will.
sure I do as well. Actually, what's that site? I'm gonna do some live research.
Just it's look up Steam account calculators or account worth or something. It's a Steam DB thing.
Sure.
But to me, what this is it promises to be simple. You download your games, you log in with your Steam account, they're there. You can play them on the go. It's not game streaming; it's actually running the games on the console, which is pretty cool. But then there's this whole other element to it that Valve has been pretty clear about in a lot of the videos that I've watched of them talking, is that it's a computer.
Mhm.
It is not a lockdown console. It's not an Xbox where you can't get into Windows. You can do whatever you want with this thing. And so I see a lot of possibility to use it almost as like a gaming with a little bit of productivity. I think there's more use for it just than gaming, which is very appealing to me. If not for a personal purchase like right away, for a recommendation. Someone's like, I want to play PC games.
Mhm.
I hesitate to recommend anything else at this point. I mean, we'll see how it really does. We got to wait till people get their hands on them and they give real reviews. But the idea that you can get a competent, computer for $400, $400, maybe the other ones are a little more expensive, that you can plug a mouse and keyboard into, you can type an email out, but you can also play games on the go. There's something there in that like idea. The unlockedness of it is maybe the most appealing thing to me that you
Yeah.
can do with the console.
For me, I think that is the real draw. And I found myself more often than not lately. And I think the reason that, well, I started this off saying it's not immediately interesting to me. There is some interest in it. And I'm mostly waiting to see if the too good to be trueness comes to fruition. But I found myself not very interested in PC gaming because just being locked to a chair at a desk is just so limiting to me. I find it hard to relax, hard to get comfortable in terms of, immersing myself in a game. And but the one thing I do love about PC is the flexibility of it, and not only that, how ridiculously cheap Steam games are. And of course, I just looked up. If we're looking at the high end of account value, $2,282 worth of
Yeah, I
Steam games.
averaged mine at the high end is like 1,700, which is
Yeah,
I have like skins and stuff too, which is kind
sure.
of
Yeah.
BS in terms of value. But I own a lot of games. I own a lot of games on Steam.
Hmm.
That's where I think about buying them, and so to not have to rebuy them, if I wanted to play Stardew Valley, which is a game I immediately think of as wanting to play on this, I don't have to
Yeah.
buy it. I don't even have to start a new save. That's another cool thing. It's all linked. You can go in between, play on the deck, and then it uploads the save to the Steam cloud, and then it pulls it back down on your computer, and you're good to go again. That's pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to this device being most compelling to people who are already integrated PC players for the most part. I think where I foresee the issues being is the fact that when you buy your Switch or you buy any console, you're everything released on that storefront, you're going to be able to play. We are going to run into an issue of power. We're going to run into these issues of compatibility. There's going to be these questions that are inherent to PC gaming that are not going to magically disappear because we're in this form factor. I think where it makes the most sense is for the intelligent PC player, the discerning gamer who is already integrated into the ecosystem, who wants this new flexibility. And for them, I think it's great. And I think that it seems like Valve is being smart about offering the openness of the ecosystem necessary to accommodate everything they can. And it's very clear that this is a device that Valve is really pushing. Gabe Newell had a quote to the effect of the price of the machine being painful but necessary. They're obviously taking a loss on this hardware, which I think
Mm-hmm.
communicates that they believe in it, and that they also understand that they make such a huge fucking rip off of everything sold on Steam
They
that
make
doesn't
so
matter.
much money off of Steam on a regular basis that,
Right.
yeah, you're exactly correct.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but it communicates the fact that they're not just throwing this out to die. They're saying we can take the hit. We want you to own this device. But I
Mm-hmm.
just think that there are a lot of hurdles intrinsic to BC gaming that you buy a console to avoid for that accessibility that are still going to be here. So my
Yeah.
my question is going to be, why, if you're on the outside, would you go for this machine if you want just an accessible handheld gaming experience? You're probably going to go for a Switch. Or if you're a more dedicated PC player, just get a proper PC. I mean, part of the experience of PC is that fidelity and the total customization.
Yeah.
That's why I
Mm-hmm.
think that this is going to be a really powerful piece of technology in very specific use cases. But I think on the whole, it's going to remain pretty niche.
Yeah, I mean, when I think to myself, projecting 6 years in the future when I have one of these, I think to my time playing PC games, whether that be on the PC that I have right here or on my laptops that I've used in the past, and the flexibility, admittedly, that comes with being able to access multiple game stores and emulate and use it as a computer, but then also just the messes that I've had using a PC and something doesn't work right, and there's like, you can get files that corrupt one another, or I've had a hard time getting emulators to run properly because I'm inept, not necessarily because it's something wrong with my computer. But there's so much more complexity to getting each specific thing to run on a computer because you've got to download all sorts of different things. And
Mm-hmm.
and this being a weak computer, a powerful handheld, but a weak computer, I'm just curious of how this will end up being in terms of a simple use tool.
Now, I want to make it clear that all the computer aspects of it are not native. It's intended that you open it up, it boots into SteamOS, you log in, you do everything through their
Sure.
design,
Okay.
and that if you don't want to, you never have to leave that, and you can only just use it as a strict handheld console. You can play it like it's locked down, and for those who want to expand into that, into emulation, into playing different game stores and whatnot, can make that work. And so, a lot of what I think of it as is kind of a value proposition, even for non PC gamers. If you want to move into the PC sphere, it's like a half step kind of. You're halfway there. You're building. If you're new and you don't own any games on Steam, you will buy games on Steam, and
You'll have them on Steam if you
or
ever
you
get a
have
computer.
yeah, and they're there, forever, in quotes, as long as Valve exists.
Mhm.
And that, to me, is a large benefit, at least. And I think tech wise, I think it's pretty good. I think you're right that it is in the weaker ends of a computer, but computers are so damn hard to get nowadays that I think that is like a not a moot point, but a relatively not a super big one. Because if you're trying to build a big, beefy PC for $649, like, you're going to get something worse than what the Steam Deck is running, just because of
Yeah,
the way
especially because
that.
they're selling it at a loss. I mean, the technology that's going into this is more powerful than, or worth more than what you're paying, but because Valve is willing to shell out the loss for us to get it into people's hands. And honestly, you mentioning that I didn't fucking even register in my brain that it is intended as a Steam console where it has its own OS and you just go to your Steam library, press your button, and it launches up the game. I think that kind of, not entirely, but knocks out the point that I was saying. Like, okay, there's the issues with PC, but
It's
technically they're
designed.
not really there unless you futz with it. And at that
Yeah.
point, you know what you're doing, and you're going
Yeah.
to be able to do the research to get it done properly. So this proposition of this console, I think, honestly, the more I think about it, and I was talking about this yesterday on the Discord, is kind of ridiculous, right? You're getting what is, the lowest version, $100 more than a base Switch, 50 more than a Switch OLED. It'll play, other than the Nintendo games, basically any game you want on your Switch, better and cheaper because it's Steam and it's going to have Steam sales. And I think that's also something that's like insanely, like a
Hmm.
insane value proposition.
Do
You can
you
get
still have to
basically
pay?
all the
Do
same
you
games
still
for the
have to
same.
pay for Nintendo Online?
Yes.
So you only have to pay the internet provider to get the internet. You don't have to pay for the online service on
Yeah.
this.
That's also a good point.
Steam Friends, all like the Steam social connectivity things work really well. I'm pretty sure SteamOS 3.0, which is a good gag. It's going around in the Steam in the Valve community right now, that they released a third of anything. So the newest SteamOS, and I've used like Steam Big Picture, which is a little modified, just on the desktop, and as like a controller only. I sometimes play games with my Xbox One controller, and it works fine. I mean, it's good. It's an interface that works with thumbsticks, and it's like I'm not using my mouse to do that kind of stuff. So I expect it to feel relatively smooth and polished. Just in how it works and whatnot. And I am kind of excited for the touchpads. They said that they're going to have dual, always worry about how do you type? It's a keyboard and mouse. How do you emulate that on a thing like this? And I'm looking forward to see how those touch, kind of like trackpads work. They've been working on trackpad technology for like 10 years at Valve, and hopefully this is their best yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of complaining about the ergonomics of the device, and I feel like that's really premature. I don't think that Valve is going to R&D a device that feels like fucking garbage to hold, and I
Mhm.
think that the promise of what they are offering there with the ways that they are undertaking the very complex task of adapting PC interfaces to a console SKU, already something very complicated when a game like Sim City or City Skylines or whatever comes over to console as it is. I think finding this sort of hybridized approach to control is really great. And I think it also speaks to something that I don't think people are giving enough credit to. Developers don't need to make a separate SKU for this. Maybe they can
Mm-mm.
have a sort of suite of options that is tailor made. Like, these are the preferred settings for this device. But by and large, your PC SKU, if it's within what this device can manage, is going to run. There's no question of, is there going to be third party support, which I think is really important for a
Yeah.
device like this. But I also think that the comparisons to Switch miss the point of, you buy Nintendo hardware to play Nintendo games.
Yeah.
No
Hmm.
one really
Yeah.
gives a fuck. No one is buying the Switch to play The Witcher. I have The Witcher on Switch because I bought a Switch to play Nintendo's games, and I just so happened to also buy The Witcher. I think these devices thus compete in very different lanes, and I think the problem I foresee is that this isn't really a device that has any kind of presence at retail, because why would it? It's digital only. Maybe you got a little end cap of them by the Oculuses or whatever. And so for the average player, why necessarily would you want this opposed to buying an Xbox Series or a PlayStation 5 if you want to play these games? Sure, you've got handheld, but if you care enough about the PC-esque experience, you're probably going to want the dedicated power of a PC or sort of of a gaming laptop, what have you. And especially if you think about where game streaming is now with Xbox, you buy a backbone controller and you're in a good hub. You can play a lot of games through the cloud already. I think that there is a not too distant future, the way that a lot of other publishers and companies are trending, where streaming becomes so popular and so ubiquitous and so seamless. Stadia is already very good. Say what joke about Stadia if you want. It's a very good bedrock there. I think that there's going to be a lot of factors that are going to pop up and get into Steam Deck's lane, which is going to push it down. I think it's going to push it to the edges. I think it's going to speak to people like you, Timo. It's going to speak to people like those in our Discord and those who are so engaged that they're reading an IGN preview. My problem is more so, I don't really think that anybody outside of that is going to care in a material way, and I don't think the device is positioned in a way where they even are going to care. But I don't think Valve really minds. I what I push more back against is not necessarily the promise of the device, but more the idea that it's going to become ubiquitous. I just don't think that that's what this is trying to do, or really what it can do. The way that the rest of the gaming landscape is shifting and moving.
That's an interesting point. That reminds me of what happened with the Steam controller. If you remember back, the Steam controller came out, funny looking thing, weird controller, big giant
Feels good, by the way. I like that
track
controller a lot, I will
trackpads,
say.
and nobody bought it when it came out, and everyone was like, where does this fit in the marketplace? And nowadays they don't make them anymore, and they're super hard to get. They're like really expensive. They're like $120 a pop. You have to buy them used. They're like a sought after gaming peripheral for PC players. And I think Valve realized what happened with that product release. They've done other hardware. They were doing the Vive, and now they've got their own VR stuff. And they see
Valve
where,
Index, I think you mean.
yes, the
Yeah.
Index, the Vive came first, and then it's the Index.
Oh,
Um,
Valve made the Vive?
Valve did make the Vive
Oh, did not know that.
way back a long time ago. Um, I think Valve understands kind of where they sit in this, like, in the hardware sphere of gaming, because they know they're pretty much on top still of the PC marketplace and whatnot.
I do think that research and those failed attempts in the past, and the fact that they are pushing this obviously a lot cheaper, a lot more accessible in terms of, yeah, we're locking this down, you can do it, but for the people who buy it, you don't need to. I think this will end up being their biggest push into it's going to be in Walmarts and Best Buys and Targets and GameStops. Like, they will be there, and in large numbers. Probably not, because for a while it's gonna take a long time for those consoles to get there, because they are already selling out so much. But I do think that Valve realizes that they want this to be a little more accessible to larger audience, and I think it will have commercials for it. I think it will, in a way that other Valve hardware didn't really have, and it will be in those stores. So there will be cognizance of it in a way that other past Valve hardware hasn't. So I can see this, well, not cracking the marketplace entirely. It's certainly having its own share there.
A question I have, and I don't have an answer to this question, is why the fuck are they even making this thing? And that's something I wonder about because
Hmm.
they already, Timo, you've said it, I've said it. They're making an unholy shut the fucking front back doors, close the windows type of money. Why
Dota,
are they making
here
this thing?
a little example of how much money Valve has. Dota has a crowd-funded prize pool where the crowd
Yeah.
funds. They pay. You buy cosmetics and shit. I do this like every year. It's habitual. I waste a lot of money. And 25% of the money I spend goes to the prize pool, and the other 75% goes to Valve. And
Yeah.
it's because of the pandemic and whatnot. It's 2 years of crowdfunding for this year's prize. Guess how much money is only a quarter of what they raised in this thing alone?
Gotta be tens of millions, right?
$40 million.
So think about that for a second. The reason Nintendo releases hardware is so that they can push their software on it, and then they make 100% of that rip. So that's it. It is in their incentive to not go third party to publish on PlayStation, Xbox. So they keep 100% of that money. So when they sell 35 million copies of Animal Crossing: New Horizons, they just made a disgusting amount of money because they didn't have to share that at all. But
Hmm.
Valve is not. Valve is not in that position. They make the artifact. They make Artifact. They make they make Alex. They have their hands in other games, right? But their money is almost entirely passive. They have to pay to upkeep Steam and keep it the sort of agile marketplace that it is. But their money does not come from their own games. So I guess when I think
Well,
about this
sort
from a
of.
macro level, like what's the point of taking such a loss on every system sold if the end result is not you're getting more than you already have, if that makes sense.
Well, Valve does take a cut of Steam store percentages. Remember, that's a
Right.
big part of the Epic versus Steam debacle. Is that Epic takes less of a cut from developers than Valve does? They take kind of a lot of money, actually, when you look into it, on every single sale, on
Yeah.
every single community marketplace transaction. It's essentially a gigantic money printer, feeding off PC gamers who traditionally have more money than other, it's more expensive to have a good PC. They're a lot more willing to spend money on games and whatnot. And I think it more than just being a piece of hardware to play on. I think it drives interest. I think it makes it so that Steam and PC gaming is more accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
They're taking a loss, and yet they're going to, I think, recoup some of that when people buy games off their store, and when people realize, I have a bunch of Steam games. I'm gonna go and get a computer that have a bigger computer that I'll companion with my Steam Deck, and then we'll use that. And well,
Sure.
it's the Steam sale. Let me buy more games.
Yeah.
Valve's really good at making it seem like it's a great idea to spend a huge amount of money on video games.
Oh,
They've
and
got
I've
that.
done it.
They have got that figured out. And so I think that that's, at least in my mind, without knowing anything of the behind the scenes reasoning of this, is kind of my interest, my not explanation for the whole thing.
Postulation.
Yeah, Valve
Yeah.
also likes hardware. I think they have a soft spot for making this kind of stuff. And I think Gabe Newell and I think a lot of the developers and engineers at the company just kind of like this. And so who knows? Could have started as a passion project 10 years ago, and they've just making it work now. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I'll be very curious. I'm assuming this stuff will come out more closer to launch to generate hype. And I know Gabe Newell's already done some interviews, but I really want to know why they're doing this. Because if it's about accessibility and ubiquity, I have a Microsoft Surface Book that I bought for like $800 for high school, and that has Steam on it, and I'm playing Steam games on there. If you want to talk about ubiquity, it doesn't get more ubiquitous in a launcher. And that's kind of my point. If the majority of your revenue, as you were saying, is the passive rip of, okay, you put your game on Steam, we get 30, console manufacturers usually take 30%. I don't know what Steam takes. We're going to take this, we're going to make all of this revenue. That doesn't necessitate hardware. So
Mm-mm.
what I almost wonder is does this kind of telegraph perhaps a return to Valve as a publisher, wherein you want that kind of console sort of optical presence where, okay, we have a machine, so we are going to release Half-Life fucking proper 3 or call it 4 or whatever, Portal, whatever, because then I think there's a little bit more sense in an overall resurgent Valve opposed to a Valve that is releasing a product that services a revenue stream that they already get elsewhere without having to take a loss on a piece of hardware that doesn't seem to really speak to the mass market gamer. So I'm confused and very interested by this entire thing.
Well,
I think
if I hope you're right about them becoming back in the publishing game, because I'd love to see some more, well, Half-Life Alyx got good reception. I didn't play it, but as far as I understood, it was a good game and it worked really well in VR as a VR game. But I would, I'd kill to see some more great Valve content, see some a new Portal game and whatnot. I mean, that would be many, many, many PC gamers' dreams come true if
Yeah.
that was the case. So I hope you're right, Abram.
But here's the other problem I just thought of. Sorry to cut you off, Tucker. But you don't even need that to get 100% of the rip. If you sell it on Steam on my Surface Book, you still get 100%. You're not splitting that with Microsoft because I bought my Surface Book from Microsoft. So again, that even cuts against what I'm saying. So I guess I just still don't even know why they're making this thing.
I think from my perspective, having played a lot of my life, I was a PC gamer, and I played it on my laptop, and it didn't run great. But then I got a PC, and it ran a little bit better. And I was very into Steam. I was very into the marketplaces. I made a lot of those transactions of skins and selling the cards and stuff. Valve has such a presence on PC in a way that I don't think a lot of people outside of PC are aware of. Of course, the Valve games, but because it's been so long since a major one came out, of course, Dota and CSGO are still going, but the Half-Lives and the TF2s and the Portals of the world were a decade ago. And I think what this signals to me is, of course, hopefully a return to the publishing business. But I don't know if we can really predict that, is them making a bigger attempt into experimentation and visibility. They like to experiment with things and just see what sticks. They're taking a cut on this, and they might not, it might not work, but if it does, could be a new huge thing for them. And if it grows and grows and grows, it's going to be in those stores, and people are like, okay, now we're familiar with Valve, now we're familiar with Steam, and when they come out with another game and they can plaster that on commercials and advertisements in a way that PC gaming doesn't necessarily have, like PC specific games, that's a huge bump in visibility. It's like, okay, well, if you're Joe Schmo and you want to play the next big game made by this company that's been around for generations, get the handheld version. It's cheaper than a PC. It runs all these games great. I think there's so much they can do in terms of marketing with saying, hey, this thing runs basically everything an Xbox can, and most of the PlayStation games and most of the Switch games, and it's handheld in a way that was initially the draw of the Switch, but now that's sort of just becoming, this is actually what the promise of the Switch was initially, and it's just the better version. And the visibility for them, I think, is going to be important if they try to come back in a major way. It's not just going to be like the people really invest in PC gaming who are wanting this, but people who just see it in a store and they're interested in what's going on.
I think it has the possibility to it. No, I don't want to use the word like disrupt. That's a way overused tech buzzword. But to cause at least a little bit more thought in hardware land and whatnot about what can be really done with these consoles. Because like you said, I think handheld gaming is much more accessible and much more popular to a lot of non-gamers, even non-gamers, people who maybe play occasionally on friends' consoles or whatnot, can really get into that handheld aspect. I have friends at college that don't play games but have given serious thought to buying a Switch, for the games. Basically, they wanted to play games that were on the Switch, and I think that if you want to play games that are on a computer, you should probably think about this.
The way I think about it is, and I was looking this up when you were talking, Tucker, about your point about visibility, and I'm seeing this number thrown around a lot whenever I look it up. 120 million monthly active accounts on Steam as of last year. Mm-hmm. That is a much bigger market share than most consoles, period, in history have ever achieved. If you want,
of course.
Steam has a bigger and better visibility than Microsoft and PlayStation and Nintendo do from a numbers perspective. Steam is ubiquitous in a way that they're not. And I think if you want to talk about capturing the casual player, the answer is not in dedicated hardware. The answer is in handheld gaming through streaming and through mobile platforms. So I think if Steam really wanted to move in that direction, the answer is, why isn't there a mobile Steam client? Or why isn't Steam investing more in game streaming? Because when Xbox tells you are at the center of your ecosystem, and if you want to play Halo Infinite, you have to spend $15 a month for Game Pass, and any one of these number of controllers you can connect to your iPhone and play Halo, or to your TV through our streaming app. That's how you get a non-gamer in. I think that the problem is not necessarily getting them onto a PC. The problem is getting them onto a piece of dedicated hardware. And this is just another piece of dedicated hardware if you're tackling it from the perspective of looking for new users. So that's why I don't think this is necessarily a play for visibility, because the fact that my school computer can run Steam, it does a lot more to capture the non-gamer than pretend this is a Steam Deck, this $400 to $600 device that you bought separately. That's why I really think that this is either a way for Valve to try to jockey into a position of becoming a Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony, in the sense of having a bigger presence from a first party perspective and thus having their own hardware, or it's simply to speak to the people like Timo and you and me and the people in our Discord and the people on Twitter and the engaged community who see a personal use case for a handheld PC. Because I do. I want to play a lot of PC games, but that's not the way I play games. I'm a console guy, so I am much more likely to invest in this piece of hardware. But I'm not the type of person that we're trying to look to outside of the ecosystem, believe it or not. So I just struggle with the idea that this is for catering to non-gamers.
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. My final thought is, can I get the Adobe apps to run on this? Because if I could, that would be the best like mobile workstation ever. Because it's not like horrible hardware. It's not great. It's not as good as the computer I use now. But like, if I could get that to work, that would be like the most amazing on the go gaming content creation machine you could possibly think of. Just the ability to record it handheld, play like that, and then plug it into the dock, set up mouse and keyboard, and boom, you're editing. Who knows if that works? I remain doubtful. Those are intense programs. But if it could do that, that would be very, very interesting, I think.
I mean, it's more powerful than Abram's laptop, and that struggled, but it ran Photoshop and Premiere, or well, GIMP. No, I'm not gonna put any words in your mouth. It ran Premiere.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking back to today when I was trying to export BLB, a new BLB episode, and my computer was freaking the fuck out because just exporting a video takes a lot out of your processing power. But even if that thing, which it is, more powerful than the laptop I'm running on now, it can run those. Will it go and slow down to fuck? Yeah, probably. But at that point, you're still having the benefit of having it on the go in a way that, your laptop and my laptop couldn't even handle.
I think the one thing I would hesitate there is if you're talking about 64 or what is it, like 256 gigabytes of internal storage, you're barely holding
Good point.
You're barely holding 2 AAA games. Then you're going to start editing and exporting video in any kind of quality.
Great fucking point.
I think that there's definitely
well, as a video editor, I'm on external hard drives almost entirely now. But yes,
sure,
I see what you're saying.
And then are you going to want to start attaching all kinds of external hard drives to this thing? At a certain point, it's not really a productivity machine. I think that any of that is secondary.
1 terabyte SSD card in there, SD card in there. It's an investment, but at that point, I would say that investment is worth it. And
yeah, but if you're paying, let's say you buy the second nicest ones, you're paying what, $500 or $600, and then you're paying $200 to expand your storage, and then you're paying to have your monitor, and then and then you got your dock, and then you got to buy your keyboard and your mouse and everything. At a certain point,
you don't need the dock.
The dock, the dock is not a proprietary thing. You can use any USB-C powered hub to break out from it, get HDMI out, get USB in.
And at that point, you don't even need a monitor. You just put it on your TV, and you are a human being. You've got a keyboard somewhere, or you pay $20 for one.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of those things that add on to the price are essentially negligible because you're a human being in the modern world. You've got a TV and a keyboard laying in a closet somewhere.
Yeah, but my point is more, if you're spending $600 for your handheld gaming device, and then you have to spend more to have that kind of space you need, and then you have to pay for these services like Adobe month after month, you're probably going to invest in a stronger piece of hardware that is productivity focused. I think that it's probably a mistake to view this as anything other than foremost a gaming machine that can maybe segue when you forget your laptop at home and you need to do work. That's more my thing. I just think my entire point about this device is that I think it's really interesting that Valve is even investing in this kind of hardware.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to temper expectations about both what it's going to be able to do and where it's going to situate itself in the marketplace. But in the context of just itself, if I'm ever going to play Half-Life, and if I'm ever going to play Portal, if I'm ever going to play half these games, I'm going to play it here. And I love the form factor of portable gaming. I love that kind of flexibility. So if it really can run at an amicable frame rate, amicable resolution, AAA titles, and I can get them for cheaper on Steam, then it is going to speak to me, and I am going to buy one. But a lot of it is wait and see for me right now.
I think that's a most important lesson from this whole thing is, looks great on paper. Looks like a lot of everyone that I know, I think, sees a personal use case for it, but we'll just have to see what the actual use cases end up being like, and how people use it. What kind of crazy stuff people can get to run on it. The joke, can it run Doom, is kind of moot. Of course it can.
Can run Doom Eternal, presumably.
Yeah,
showed
they've
it.
advertised
I
it running
guess
Doom Eternal.
Switch runs Doom Eternal, so I guess it doesn't even really matter at this point.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
It will run Doom, everyone. I can guarantee that.
You can guarantee it, and so will Mr. Gabe. Very interesting discussion. I really like hearing you guys, your kind of inverse perspective on this whole thing. Very cool points. I can't wait to at least see some hands-on videos of it. I probably won't get it in. I'm not replacing a reserve order for it unless I win the lottery. In that case, I am. It's that kind of a deal for me. But thank you for joining me. Little gaming content from the old Timo, and we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya. Oh shit! I have to hit stop record.